Welcome to the Darkstream. VoxDay, voxday.blogspot.com, and of course, Castelia House. Thanks for tuning in. The topic tonight is hierarchy and human behavioral patterns. In last night's Darkstream, I talked a bit about a behavioral pattern that I described as the gamma, and that sparked an occasionally lively discussion in the comics, or in the comments, as it often does. And it's not a surprise because human behavior is something that people are particularly interested in, and it's something that tends to make certain types of people uncomfortable, especially when their own behavioral patterns are being discussed. So, but that's just one of the 5 or 6 primary behavioral patterns. And so, and the reason that these matter, the reason that these behavioral patterns are relevant, is because they allow you to better understand, better anticipate, and better predict the behavior of the individuals around you. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have an alpha. Now, alphas are at the top of the sociosexual hierarchy. They tend to be more attracted to women. They tend to be more physically imposing, and they tend to be respected, looked up to, feared by other men. So in an office environment, what do you think the major problem is likely to be when you are dealing with an alpha? What is something that you don't want to provide to an alpha? Well, one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to surround him with attractive young women, because the alpha is usually going to do what alphas do, and he's going to feel the need to make a sexual conquest of the most attractive women in his vicinity. This is normal alpha behavior. In the same way, when you're dealing with someone who is what we call a delta, and this is what most men are. Most of you listening to this are probably what we call deltas. Think of the salt of the earth. Think of the dependable guy in the military movies. Think of the guy that you turn to in your office or at your school or in your organization when you just need somebody to get something done that you can rely on. That's the delta. And the deltas are the people that make the organizations work. They're the people who do most of the work. But what is the behavioral pattern of the delta? Well, the delta likes to be a part of a team. The delta prefers to be given direction. He doesn't tend to do well if he is simply allowed to do whatever he wants, because then he has to make the decisions that he doesn't want to make. As a general rule, deltas don't like making decisions. And so, the problem with the delta, the behavioral pattern with the delta in the office environment, is that you often have highly competent guys, people who are very good at their job, and they get promoted into positions where suddenly, instead of doing something. They find themselves assigned to talking about something, or deciding something, or managing other people. And as a general rule, that's not what they want to do. That's not what they're best at. It's not what they enjoy. And so the challenge when you're dealing with these behavioral patterns is not to look at them as being judgmental in any way. I mean, obviously, there is an amount of judgment involved, because anytime you're categorizing, anytime you're anticipating and describing things, you're exercising an amount of judgment. But I don't want you to understand this in pejorative terms. Okay, the alpha can cause tremendous problems in a way that the most disagreeable, unlikable gamma never can. And so, but unless you understand what these behavioral patterns are, how they tend to play out, how they apply to people, and how to correctly identify people and put them into those categories, they're not going to be much use for you. But they're a tremendously useful tool. They're a very, very useful heuristic to understand what people are going to do, what motivates them, and also to anticipate problems that they're likely to cause when things go wrong. And so, I'll give you another example. I am the behavioral pattern that is known as the sigma. Now, a lot of people think they want to be sigmas, but they don't, because sigmas are outside the normal hierarchy. They don't fit in. They don't tend to easily coexist with other people. And yet, people are constantly dragging them in to leadership positions because they tend to be confused with alphas. But the problem with the sigmas is that sigmas don't play very well with others. I have people frequently getting upset with me because I don't play nicely with other people that they feel should be my ideological allies. There were a lot of people, for example, who were very upset with me because they're like, why are you criticizing Jordan Peterson? He's on our team. Why are you criticizing Ben Shapiro? He's on our team. Well, I think I've made a good case for explaining why they're not. Why they're approved opposition rather than being actually of the political ideological right. But even if they were, I wouldn't naturally refrain from saying what I thought. Because, like I said, I don't tend to naturally be a team player. And so, sigmas can cause tremendous disruption to an organization. In fact, many organizations methodically weed them out because they don't want independent thinkers getting in the way of the processes and getting in the way of the machine. I got laid off by my own father when I was working at his company because I was causing problems with his programmers who wanted to work on my projects rather than the stuff that he needed them to be doing. It was disruptive. And so as positive as it can be to have independent thinkers and so forth, then it can be a problem too. All of these behavioral patterns, all of these sociosexual hierarchical ranks have pluses and minuses. I mean, yes, we tend to view the people of the lower ranks a little bit more critically. There's a reason why people tend to find gammas annoying. There's a reason why they tend to be attracted to alphas. But the fact of the matter is there are pluses and minuses everywhere. If I need to find out a high level of detail about something, then I want a gamma expert, because the gamma is going to know all the trivia, all the minutia, and it's going to be something that's very important to him. At the same time, you have to be very, very cautious when you're dealing with gammas, because as you saw, if you happen to read the comments of the last Darkstream, then you see what happens when that gamma obsession turns to gamma rage, and how they become obsessed with trying to get people back. I've seen this happen again and again and again when you have a gamma who takes offense at something, whether it's a perceived lack of respect, whether he feels that he got beaten and embarrassed publicly in an argument, or even the failure of someone else to take his advice. I've seen all of those things within a organization, and the response of the gamma was to attempt to destroy the organization openly. They openly announced that they were going to devote, in one case, they actually openly announced that they were going to devote the rest of their lives to trying to destroy the careers of the other people at the company. Now, this is a little bit crazy from the non-gamma perspective, but it is a absolutely reliable behavioral trait of that particular behavioral pattern. In fact, I'm willing to bet that if you look at the whistleblowers in corporate America and in government, those that are not primarily motivated by a strong moral sense, then what you will probably find that almost all of them are gammas who are attempting to seek revenge against someone in the organization on which they're blowing the whistle. And so I'm actually working, let me show you here, I'm actually working on a book that is tangentially related to this. That's not it. Oh, here it is. This is only tangentially related to, there's only going to be one chapter relating to this. Most of it is actually focused on attempting to quantify the damage that SJWs do to their corporations. But the the way that the behavioral patterns factor in is something that I felt was worth a chapter here. I may expand it into a book eventually, but that's just to give you an idea of what I've been thinking about and how I've been looking at this. But the thing that you have to understand is that these patterns are reliable. You can see them in every single organization, and they tend to play out in almost precisely the same way every single time. Now, as always, when you talk about these things, it's very common for people to, immediately go into the "what about me" mode. What am I? All that sort of thing. Well, if you look honestly at your behavior, it's pretty obvious what you are. Are you someone who is a leader? I'm not talking about a leader in your own head. I'm saying, do you have a group of people who literally follow you around, who do what you tell them to do? If you're not a leader like that, then you're not an alpha. Are you someone who likes to be told what to do? Or are you someone who likes to be a lieutenant, who's kind of a middleman, taking direction from someone else, but helping that person get things done? That's what I call the beta mindset. And so it's, again, this is different than the simple binary alpha beta division. But the important thing to understand is that the names don't matter. This is something that, for some reason, a lot of people struggle with grasping, is that we're not creating anything here. We're not inventing anything here. I like to use the example of the okapi. The okapi is an animal. It looks kind of like a combination of a zebra and a giraffe, and it's only found in some of the deep jungles in Africa. And so people told scientists and zoologists for decades that this animal existed, but it wasn't quote unquote discovered until sometime I think it was in the mid 20th century. It might have been that late. And then they named it the okapi. But the thing that you need to understand is that the animal existed before it was named. The animal was always there. These behavioral patterns exist and are exhibited on a daily basis by people around you every single day. It doesn't matter what you call them. It doesn't matter whether you think they're good or whether you think they're bad. All we're doing is recognizing that similar people in similar social positions, they are all playing out the same role. Now, see, here's a comment here. I don't take these comments very seriously. I'm not a leader. I'm not a follower. I'm not a middleman. I'm my own thing. I take what I can take and leave out the BS. Maybe you do, but more likely, you're not sufficiently self-aware to understand the behavioral patterns that you exhibit. What you should do if you want to know this is ask one of your colleagues, not one of your close friends. Ask one of your colleagues to simply chronicle your behavioral patterns with regards to how you interact with others. And it's very, very easy to categorize your behavior through the eyes of someone else. You know, most people have no ability they have no ability whatsoever to honestly judge themselves. And so, and that's one reason why I stopped blogging at Alpha Game, because I got so tired of all these people wanting to talk about what they were, what other people thought they were, and then argue about what they were. To do that, to focus on that, is to completely miss the point. It's not about you. It's about how you can anticipate and predict the behavior of others. And anyone can do it. It doesn't matter what you are. Doesn't it matter more if you're hiring someone, if you're bringing someone in as a volunteer? Isn't it more important to understand whether that person is going to try to take over your company, if they're going to be incapable of taking responsibility and making decisions on their own, or if they're going to lash out in a fit of rage and attempt to destroy you and the organization if they don't get their way, or if they're going to pay no attention to whatever you tell them to do, and they're just going to go off and do their own thing without really paying much attention to what your objectives are. Wouldn't you agree that being able to distinguish between those things is much, much more important? So I would just encourage you, when you're thinking about the human behavioral patterns, that you pull your focus out of your own navel and look at other people. Pay attention to how they behave. Look at the patterns of behavior that they exhibit. And then you will start to better understand how those patterns relate to you, if that's what you're interested in. I'm not particularly interested in how these things apply to me. I'm not particularly interested in what anyone else thinks about it. I'm mostly interested because I can apply it. When we're bringing in an artist, when we're bringing in a volunteer, it's very, very important to understand where they fit in this scale, because the amazing thing is how similarly the people who don't come through talk ahead of time. The amazing thing I found, when we've been, a lot of people don't realize, for example, the degree of difficulty that we surmounted in getting Alt Hero number 1 out the door. Alt Hero number 1 was supposed to be Alt Hero number 2. And number 2 was supposed to be number 1. But we had to completely change the art team on that, because the initial people turned out to be incapable of delivering. And the interesting thing is that the people who couldn't deliver, they all said the same type of stuff. When I first brought them on, they talked my ear off about how excited they were to work on it, how great this was going to be, how this was just the neatest, greatest thing ever, and so forth, and then promptly got nothing done for months. Whereas the other folks that we brought in didn't talk that much about it. They just got to work, delivered on time, deliver regularly. I mean, in one case, like clockwork. Based on the behavioral patterns, what do you know? Well, we don't necessarily know what the first group is, but we can be damn sure that the second group are strong deltas. You can probably make a lot of reasonable predictions about their other behavior on the basis of that one experience with them. And that's the power of understanding the behavioral patterns and then applying them. And so, when you look at what people are doing, you can reliably look at their other behaviors. And if you notice synchronicities, if you notice that somebody over here is behaving the way as somebody over there, then you can be pretty confident that what they're going to do is they're going to behave and react in much the same fashion. So anyhow, that's just something to chew on, something to think about. And, I think that, I think that you will get a lot of utility out of this if you learn to focus it on other people. So this is kind of an interesting question, which I think is relevant. Many of the well-known figures in the alt-right speak against purity spiraling and punching right. I don't know another public alt-righter who has thrown down against three: Torba, Anglin, Peterson. Well, it's very simple. I'm not punching right. Andrew Torba, Andrew Anglin, and Jordan Peterson are all well to my left. I don't think a lot of you even understand what punching right means. Okay? It doesn't mean don't punch anyone on the right. It means don't punch anyone to your right. So, I prefer the term, or the concept, you might say, cherish your extremists. Your extremists are the people who are willing to take on the other side. And so, that's why you want to leave them alone. Let them battle the other side, rather than dealing with the moderates and on their own side. So, anyhow, that's all I have for tonight. Have a good weekend, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have a good night.